How's everybody doing? It's Cevan. Join with me is Reed and Tyler, and this is episode 8 of Likely to Dispute.
Yeah, got a great episode today. Following up from our team breakdowns. Did mine last episode, and this episode we'll be doing our reigning champions, Savant. So I think we all have a lot to say here, and might get might get a little contested, but that's what it's all about. But first, I'm going to start you gentlemen with a question of the day here. So if we were to add one starting position like to our matchups for the whole year, which would you most like to add? I mean, you can think about this in terms of the league, in terms of your own team, however you'd like. Would you like to add one additional running back spot, one additional wide receiver spot, or one additional tight end spot? I'm not going with any flex, super flex, or quarterback just to keep it simple, just three positions there. So if you had to choose one to add, which one do you choosing? Whichever one of you can go first.
Well, I'd say wide receiver because my I don't own a third running back. So for me it'd be easy, but I also think given the lack of running back by committee becoming more popular, I think you'd be a lot more stressed to start three running backs than you would three wide receivers. So I think for the overall enjoyment of the league, I would probably go with wide receiver. But I think that having these constraints prior to building a team would change how you build the team tremendously. Like I wouldn't be putting so much emphasis on my top two running backs if I knew I had to start three. So it had an interesting dynamic to add either of them,
Yeah, that's a good point.
or any of them,
Savant.
I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and for me, there's not enough tight ends in the NFL to support that. Uh, it's easily receiver. There's so many. There's up to 3 receivers on every NFL team that could produce. It's just receivers run fantasy football, and yeah, I'd add a third receiver.
I think I'll take the last one. I'll take tight ends and I'll defend it. You said there's not enough tight ends in the NFL. Well, there's 32 and 12 times 2 that only necessitates 24 spots, and I'm totally okay with getting nasty with some of these tight ends. Give me Will Disley, give me Tyler Conklin starting. I'm here for it. I think in a tight end premium league that could really induce some weird strategies with tight ends.
I
Very
wonder
weird.
if you added a second tight end spot, just like if when you add a super flex, if that would make tight ends shoot up the board like the first and second rounders, as opposed to like we talked about last episode where like the Bowers, McBride, Kincaid pocket went in like the beginning of the fourth. I wonder if it would be like super flex where Bowers and McBride, I mean Bowers might already be kind of in that range, but might be like first, second round picks when you have to start two of them. I think that'd be interesting.
I definitely think they would shoot up the board, and you'd be seeing teams draft 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends before they finish out their running backs and receivers, if that were the case.
Which is so
Yeah.
wild because like in our just a normal like one quarterback redraft league, you basically draft running backs and receivers all the way down, and then you take a quarterback and a tight end late, or maybe
Yeah,
you take one of them early. So to have that completely flip and have quarterback and tight end be all the emphasis, as opposed to running backs and wide receivers, that would be a really interesting strategy to look into.
Yeah.
it's a scarcity thing. Like Tyler was saying, there's 32 starters. Obviously, only one quarterback starting per team, and there's not 32 startable fantasy quarterbacks. So having 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends at those onesie positions, same with tight ends. There's not 32 fantasy starting tight ends, so it would be a very interesting dynamic.
Well, luckily, I don't think any of our listeners have to worry about it too much. Don't think you commissioners are going to use your powers to make those changes unequivocally. So,
Let's just say
but
that if there were two tight ends, Chig Okonkwo would not have been on the waiver wire. Like
it's
he'd be a
true.
very valuable piece in a two tight end league.
That's a great point. So, all right. Well, I'm sure we'll get to tight ends a little bit later, but for now, let's start with previewing Savant's team here. Top left, you'll see Savant's team mascot. That's Pickles, of course, looking so dapper up there. Right next to that, you'll see that Svan, Reed, and I all have Svan listed as a contender last year. Looking back, of course, Svan won the championship, but how did he get there? He had a 10-4 record, which was good for first in the league, but his points for was only fifth, notably behind mine. So maybe I should be the defending champion. Who knows? Um, Savan Reed, anything you guys want to say about thinking that this is a contending team?
I'm going to be honest. I was very much on the line of contender to playoff aspirations. I think it was a lot closer when we were preparing for this episode and looking at his team. I think it was a lot closer to playoff aspirations than I had originally thought. But I do think he's in the contender because the I don't know, the depth, not necessarily like the deep, the oh my God, this is bad. I don't know, not necessarily the depth of the team, but I think that the team isn't nearly as top heavy as it was. So I think his chances to make the playoffs are higher than I thought, but I think his chances to get to the championship are lower than I thought. So I was definitely on the line of playoff aspirations, but I did settle on the contender tier here.
Yeah.
Um, that was confusing,
That was my
but
bad.
no, for me, I just I think my lineup is pretty similar to what it was last year, and although the points for was still in the top half, but it didn't match the seeding. Um, I just like the ceiling of if everything goes right. So I think and I've got I'm pretty yeah, we'll get into the rest later. But I like myself to contend, so we're all right.
Yeah, I
While
won't. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Reed.
while we're on this topic or while we're on this slide, before we move off here, the fact that you made that Lad and Mahomes trade and then you're still only ninth in draft capital, I think is kind of wild. And I get that one of the pieces was ended up being Caleb Johnson, but I thought you were going to be higher after that trade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you basically
Well,
savaged your quarterback room to for two first round picks.
yeah, but I was already in 12th or 12th or 11th before that.
I
So I
think you
mean,
were just ahead of me, 11th.
yeah, so I went up, but you were expecting me to go higher.
Yes, like more middle of the pack.
Yeah.
But that was again, I know one of the first round picks was Caleb Johnson, so that no longer is in the pick part.
Yeah. I don't have too much to add in terms of the power rank tier. I have Swan as a generally top four team, so I think we can just get into it at this point. So
I think we can safely call his last year pretty lucky after
one might say,
being fifth in points for and finishing the year in first.
definitely. So first, we'll start with MVP, of course. Some strong candidates on Svan's team. Svan, I'll kick you the rock first because you had a different one than both Reed and I. So tell us about your MVP.
Yeah, Neighbors was definitely in contention. I know Reed loves Neighbors, so I figured he would go there. So I wanted to switch it up. Gibbs, I'm in a little, like you guys probably know, I'm in leagues with these guys in a separate league, and I'm the only one to ever own Jahmyr Gibbs in at least the two leagues that we've all been in for the last 2 years. So I was high on Gibbs out the jump. All he's done is produce. He was the only non-quarterback last year to have 10 plus points in a PPR format in all 18 games. He was the RB1 last year. Uh, he's efficient on, I guess it's not low volume, but non-workhorse volume. And I just don't see him slowing down. If anything, he should be getting more touches than he has been the last couple of years. So
Yeah, number one running back overall last year. So definitely lofty ceiling there, and he's shown that he can do it. So Reed, you had Malik Neighbors. How come you went with Malik Neighbors over Jahmyr Gibbs here?
I mean, there's no real reason I would say that I wouldn't pick Gibbs. They're neck and neck. You would be perfectly fine to pick either of them. I mean, after Neighbors was second in targets in football last year, despite missing 2 games as a rookie, add in better quarterback play from whichever of the three quarterbacks they have. He's just his ceiling is wide receiver one, just like Gibbs' ceiling is clearly running back one as he showed it last year. I don't think there's anything wrong with either of these two. I prefer the receiver. So I went with Neighbors.
Yeah. I think I'm in the same camp, and for me, it's honestly just a little bit of I don't want to say a knock on Gibbs, but Montgomery was injured a good bit of last year, and Ben Johnson is obviously no longer there as well. So But that's just getting really nitpicky. Both MVP caliber talent on anyone's fantasy team, real life offensive player of the year candidates as well. So definitely anchoring Savant's team here. All right, well, we can go ahead and move on with Gibbs and Neighbor being talked about and talked about our most improved. And we have a variety of players across the board here. So, Reed, I'm going to start with you because this is another really talented receiver on Savant's team and someone I think could be the MVP as well, but just maybe doesn't have as clear of a path there.
Yeah, big Marvin Harrison guy. I mean, the draft capital last year, fourth overall. Clearly, he's dealing with Trey McBride in terms of target competition. We just came off Tyler's episode talking about Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. I just think there's still too much talent there. There's too much opportunity. They didn't add any other pass catchers. They didn't add any running backs. There was almost all defense in the draft for them. So I don't really see any reason there's not another step there for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think this was a pretty easy one for me. Like I don't think anybody is really, I'm not reinventing the wheel here by saying the second year receiver who with top five draft capital and nearly hit 900 yards in his rookie year is going to take a big step. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I like the case. Don't necessarily like how he acquired him, but I like the player, and I definitely think there's another jump there this year.
Yeah, for my sake, I thought about picking Marvin Harrison as well, but just I Trey McBride owner, so I'll hope that those targets go to McBride. So, Savon, anyone that's talked to you in your fantasy football team knows that you're banging Drake May's drum all day long.
Okay.
That could have been phrased
That
better.
could have been, but you get what I'm saying. You're the high man on Drake May. Here's your opportunity to tell the world why that is, and your
Yeah.
most improved player here.
Yeah. So all season I've been banging Drake May's drum. Um, no, in all seriousness, going back to the inaugural draft, I've probably told the story before. He fell a little too far. He fell to the ninth round. I snagged him as my QB3. I think he was just getting passed on because everybody knew he wasn't going to be the starter. Kind of the same reasons Justin Fields fell. And year one in a terrible scheme with terrible coaching and literally no playmakers on offense, he looked all right, which is why I think everybody, not everybody, but he's got kind of a higher outlook on the 2025 season because he did get a proven head coach with a proven offensive coordinator, added two pass catchers, and a very highly touted Big Ten running back in Travion Henderson, uh, along with three new starting offensive linemen. So um, the writing's almost on the wall that he's going to break out. He's been comped to Josh Allen. You don't know the Josh Allen story, but 13th round. Um, and then the rushing upside with him, he had almost 500 yards and 12 starts last year on 7.8 yards per carry. And if you stat that out for a whole season, I didn't do the math, but it's probably like 700 yards. So I am banking a lot on him. I'm invested outside of fantasy football in him as well. So as long as the stars align, then he should be a top 10 fantasy quarterback
I
this
don't I
year.
don't know if as long as the stars align,
I was gonna
a
say,
stars aligning is like a once in a like a good luck type thing. Like the stars align for you to win the championship despite having the fifth most points scored because Ian dropped 120 against you. That's the stars aligning.
Yeah, I mean, you
yeah,
can say what you want. I busted your ass in the championship, so it doesn't matter. But
Some might say you were
yeah.
banging my drum in the
all
championship.
right, let's get to Ben
Uh,
Sinnott because
well, hold on.
I want to hear this one.
Quick question about Drake May here. You mentioned all the parts around him changing. So of the change of the coaching staff,
Yep.
the upgrades at offensive line, or the upgrades at the skill positions, which one of those three has you most excited for Drake May? Which one do you think can possibly
Ooh.
help him improve the most? If you had to stake your claim on one that really has you excited about him.
I'm gonna rank them one through three. Okay, does that
Okay,
work? Okay,
sure.
number one for me, I would say is the coaching staff. They got Mike Vrabel, who's proven to be a good head coach. He got the most out of his teams in Tennessee. And they got Josh McDaniels, whose stints as head coach did not work out. But uh, you could call him Tom Brady merchant or Bill Belichick merchant, whatever you want. He did provide a good year for Mac Jones's rookie year. And look at Mac Jones now. I would have coaching number one. I would have offensive line number two. And then I would have playmakers number three.
Very nice. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about some of those Patriot playmakers later on in this episode. But yeah, as you had mentioned just a minute ago, I selected Ben Sinnott as your most improved player. And if our trade talks, Savon, are peanut butter and jelly, Trey Benson is peanut butter, and Ben Sinnott is the jelly. And that's because that trade talk almost is always Trey Benson for Ben Sinnott in some form with other pieces. Just has never got done. I love this player, but outside of my bias, I do think Ben Sinnott can be improved. And this is kind of a cop out because Ben Sinnott was a zero last year. He was a non-factor. However, that's not concerning to me. There's precedent for this. Not every tight end is Sam Laporta or Brock Bowers in year one. Some may forget, but Trey McBride out of Colorado did not too much his rookie year. A lot of Trey McBride talk, but he's a good talking point. He didn't do much his rookie year. He sat behind Zach Ertz, and we've talked about this, and I'm sure some of you have seen on the internet. Benson is behind Zach Ertz. I'm sorry, Colorado's. Yeah, Trey McBride went to Colorado, I think. Reed,
No, it's Colorado State.
It is
I,
Colorado State.
is it really?
He was
Yeah.
not a Buffalo.
He was on a green team.
Okay, my mistake. But
I think
Trey
you should have to
McBride
trade Trey McBride after that mistake.
probably. So Ben Sinnott is behind an aging Zach Ertz. It's quite possible Zach Ertz was great last year. Good safety option for Jaden Daniels. Who knows how long Ertz is going to last in the league? Um, uh, he's been in the league quite a while. Ben Sinnott was drafted by this regime in Washington, and so with his output last year being a zero, anything more than that is an improvement. And so I think Ben Sinnott can be a valuable asset for Savon this year. Is it far stretched? Maybe. It's definitely not even close to Drake May or Marvin Harrison Jr. here, but someone I have my eye on to improve.
Yeah, I'll add on to that real quick. Ben Sinnott almost identically is following in the footsteps of Trey McBride. Year one with behind Cliff Kingsbury and Zach Ertz, absolutely nothing. It was about halfway through Trey McBride's second year. So this 2025 season, you got Ben Sinnott behind Zach Ertz and Cliff Kingsbury calling plays. We'll see what happens by week 8. But if it's anything like Trey McBride, which it has been to a T, then about midseason you'll see the changing of the guard. He does have second round draft capital, so they didn't invest nothing into him. They invested their second pick in him. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I say let's go ahead and move on to sleepers here. We have one veteran and two rookies here. Let's go ahead and Savon, you can start with the vet, and Reed and I will follow up with the rookies.
Yeah, so Stephon Diggs, 31 years old, got a lot of money, only 1 year guaranteed. I think it was 26 million guaranteed over 3 years. There was some more money, but he got brought in to be the wide receiver one for Drake May. Diggs just tore his ACL last year, but he tore it early enough to where it looks like he's going to be ready for training camp. All the offseason videos I've seen of him, he's doing stuff at 100%, so I'm not worried about him. He might have lost a step uh, physically, but he's still going to be a guy that's going to work short by the line of scrimmage. He's just going to be a guy who's going to get open for Drake so he can get a completion, move the sticks. I'm not expecting him to get like, I'm not expecting him to be a yak guy or a deep ball guy, but in PPR, full PPR, as a fourth or fifth option, I'm definitely all right with the upside that he brings, especially with the lack of pass catchers in New England.
Yeah, could it be a very good stack with Drake May, and I think a totally reasonable pick for a sleeper here, and someone I'm talking about a little bit later myself. So, Reed, you have Pat Bryant here listed as Savon's sleeper. What do you like about
Hmm.
him?
Yeah, I mean, Cevan got him in the fourth round, third round NFL draft pick. There's a lot of targets to go around in Denver. Obviously, they added Bryant in the third, RJ Harvey in the second, and Evan Ingram in free agency. And I just think that there's a real opportunity for him to dominate, the intermediate part of the field. Again, taking him over consensus, just like Harvey. I think there's something to be said about Sean Payton taking his guys and getting them the ball when they need it. Like I think there's a very real possibility he becomes a flex-worthy player by like midseason. Just with again their ability or sorry, the targets that there are to go around and what they have in store for him. So I would have liked to get him myself, but I think, like I said, very real possibility he's a flex-worthy player sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I I I agree with those thoughts. Savon, you think pretty similar thoughts on Pat Bryant there?
Yeah, I just as soon as I saw Pat Bryant, I just remember the story about Reed in the car. It's every time I think about that story, like I can picture the event perfectly, and it just makes me laugh.
I'm sure it does. Um, okay, I also had a rookie for my sleeper here for Swan's team, another tight end as well. So I've talked about two tight ends. Terrence Ferguson, currently on the Los Angeles Rams. He was drafted in the second round of this year's draft, 14th pick in the second round, out of Oregon. Broke some school records at Oregon. And what I really like about Terrence Ferguson is that draft capital. I think when Sean McVay goes out and gets a guy like Terrence Ferguson, when Tyler Higbee and Colby Parkinson are on the Rams, I think that says a lot about the player. Terrence Ferguson tested really well at the combine, and with Matthew Stafford throwing the ball, there are plenty of targets to go around. I don't think Ferguson will necessarily be a starter week one or even week six, but by the time those double digit weeks roll around 10, 11, 12, Ferguson may have been shaping out a nice role by then. So we'll see on that. But Ferguson, I like as someone that you don't have to count on starting right away, but could really be ramping up by the time fantasy playoffs start. And, if he doesn't get going this year, definitely worth keeping him on the roster to see if he can turn it on next year. So, any thoughts, Vaughn, or
Yeah, Terrence
no?
Ferguson. Like you said, he's behind a couple tight ends, but they're both older. Colby Parkinson got a decent deal last year, but he didn't live up to it. And then Tyler Higbee, he's on the latter end of his career. So them going to get Terrence Ferguson in the second round after infamously trying to trade up for Brock Bowers last year tells you that they think they had a void at tight end, and getting an athlete uh, who can work in the slot, you can work in inline, and you can work the middle of the field, short yardage, um, kind of be a safety blanket for a veteran like Stafford, as long as he's learning the playbook and being in the right spot when he's asked to, he'll get on the field. And yeah, like you said, by season's end, I would not be surprised if Ferguson's the snap leader at tight end there, and then more of a future pick. Um, I think he'll be better in the future, which most people are, but it could be a changing of the guards, and they could just move on from the other two tight ends after this season. So
Yeah, definitely good stuff. All right, well, we'll keep it moving here, um, and we'll go to best value. All three of us having some different players listed. Uh, oh, I'm s- oh, I'm sorry. Savon has Drake May listed here for the second time. Reed has Travis Etienne, and I have Diggs. Savon, you can start, and then I'll follow. and we can talk about the Patriots a little bit more. Is there anything else you want to? I know you touched on Drake May's value a little bit. Do you want to expound on that a little bit more?
Pretty much what I said earlier. He was falling because he was viewed as a backup. Um, got him in the ninth round as my third quarterback, and then once he got in, he showed his rushing upside, and he has a very nice deep ball. So I think, I mean, now he's acting as my QB1 just a season later. Whether by whether if that's good or bad, he's probably more of a QB2 going into the season with the chance to earn QB1 status. But uh, being able to pick up a quarterback nonetheless that looks like it's going to pan out, it's good value.
Savon, with all this stake invested in Drake May, I hope you know if things just start to go sideways, or maybe his pretty rough sophomore year, all that AR discourse that has been thrown at Reed, I would not be surprised if that's coming right back at you with Drake May.
That's
So,
completely fine. I would argue what Drake May showed last year is just leaps and bounds ahead of what AR's shown. So I'm ready for that argument if we get to it.
okay. Well, I had my best value is Stephon Diggs, obviously, already mentioned wide receiver, New England this year. And this is great value. Stephon Diggs was traded for a third round pick in this 2025 draft. I can't remember who Schrader selected with that pick. Swan, I believe you told us to refer to you as the milkman or something like that. Is that right?
Who?
You. Because
What?
because you send out cold offers, like cold trade.
Oh, wait.
Did you call yourself the milkman?
The telemunkas for a telemarketer?
Oh, for some reason I thought it was like a milkman, like delivering like cold milk.
You keep talking. I'm gonna figure this out.
I think it was Monkas actually. Anyways, this is a cold trade offer with Savon sending a 2025 third round pick for Stephon Diggs. So Savon has gotten his stack there. At the time, I thought it was an egregious deal, but probably more fair now. Looking, seeing who's in that third round,
He selected
still,
Jordan James with that pick. So,
love it less. Uh, I Diggs was looking great last year in Houston until he got injured. I think Diggs will be all right in New England, and even if he flops, it was still a good value for what Savon gave up. So excited to see. Actually, I don't really care how that stack goes because screw the Monkas, but yeah, that's Stephon Diggs. Reed, Travis Etienne, controversial name here going into 2025, and you have him as a best value.
yeah, I mean, he was kind of, it almost was like a throw-in to the five-way deal that we had, where Savon picked him up from Ian. And again, I kind of similar to the way I talked about DeAndre Swift last episode. Like, it feels like everyone's just kind of disregarding him because everyone just assumes he's going to get taken over, and he might be on the way out. They might be replacing him with other players, whether it be Tank or Tootin or LaQuinn Allen. Like it very well could be, but just getting him as a throw-in and somebody who's historically gotten a lot of volume and has in the past, not necessarily last year, been a good football player and efficient. This is an offense that's supposed to be a lot better this year. So again, you're starting running back as of now for a good NFL offense with a chance to score touchdowns and a proven track record of handling volume. Like I think there's a lot to like as far as the risk that you take on him. And again, I don't think that was necessarily a big risk. I thought he was more of a throw in. So totally agree with both of your guys' picks here. I both wanted to be contrarian to your guys' picks, so I took ETN, but I also think that he has a real chance um, to provide Savon value and supplant Caleb Johnson as his second starter at running back.
Yeah, I
That wasn't a shot at Caleb Johnson. I was just saying if he's a starter for the Jaguars in a good offense, it gives you a lot more depth and doesn't necessarily force you to rely on Caleb Johnson right away, as I think kind of the plan is now.
Definitely the plan.
I think I'm not quite. I mean, ETN's fine. I
As the
don't
Tank
necessarily
Bigsby owner, of course.
as the Tank's big. I think Travis Etienne's a cut candidate for the Jags this year. So I'm not super high on him. Um,
He's he's only 1 year removed from RB3.
Yeah.
with Tank Bigsby there.
What a hater.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry, Savon, that I called you the milkman. I think I was just talking about how you talking about sending cold offers, and I couldn't remember. You said like you were
It was
selling something, so
telemarketing.
I thought it was like selling cold milk, and so that's how I got to milkman. But
Honestly, I think
uh,
we should just run with it and call him the milkman now.
You can call me the milkman. I've been milking Drake May all off season, so.
That's for sure. Banging his drum and milking him this offseason.
this is
But
explicit episode.
I have a question for you, Reed.
Hmm.
Now, don't take the volume here, but if you had to bet who has the most fantasy points from the Jags running back room, just one player. Obviously, I have ETN and Tootin, and he has Tank Bixby. Who would you bet on?
I'd probably still bet on ETN because again, there's a guy who's proven to have volume, a first round pick, as you just said, 2 years removed from 1 year removed, 2 years removed. Was it 22
One,
or 23?
23.
23. So 1 year removed from a top five running back season. Again, everyone just kind of assumes the new regime is going to push him out, and they very well could. But again, you're looking at literally a day three rookie, and then Tank Bigsby, who, you know, not a bad player by any means, and did take some work from ETN last year. But if I'm betting on who is going to score more points this year, I'd still bet on ETN. I wouldn't bet on it, but if I had to, I'd bet on ETN.
Interesting. All right.
So I'd be interested if you wanted to trade him.
Is that why you asked me the other day?
I don't remember asking
Oh,
you,
wait,
but
never
I'll
mind.
ask you now on him.
Okay, yeah. No, he can be moved.
Okay. I'll give you Keenan Allen for him.
I need Fab too.
Okay. I have zero. So,
Okay.
and apparently I can't trade Fab that I don't have yet because yeah, it's not going to be in season Fab. You don't have the asset yet. Oh, well, it's going to come no matter what. So,
It might not.
yeah.
It might not. All right, let's get on.
All right. Well, now we're going to move to perhaps our favorite section, and we are going to talk about overrated players. And I'm so glad we have three different players here that we can all shit on, including Savan. So, Savan, I'm actually going to flip it to you. You don't have to tell me about Dalton Kincaid yet, but I want you to pick who goes first here.
Oh, let's go.
And
I'll
it
go
can,
first, and then
uh,
you go second, and then Reed last.
perfect.
So I put Dalton Kincaid. Um, 2 years ago, he was a first round pick, uh, going to Josh Allen. They still had Diggs, and he put up a very promising rookie year. So last year, once they traded Diggs and they had no alpha wide receiver, everybody kind of thought the stars were aligning with Dalton Kincaid to step up and be that number one option for Josh Allen. He was injury riddled for a lot of the season, but he ended up playing most of it. And in the games he played, if you watch the Bills, seemed like he got a decent amount of targets, and him and Josh were just never on the same page. There was a lot of game logs where he was getting 7 targets, but only 3 receptions, 20 yards. It was just they were not on the same page. He wasn't scoring touchdowns. He wasn't catching the ball.
He had the crucial drop in the playoffs last year,
Yep,
too.
he did.
Debatably a drop. That was a tough catch.
In the NFL, he should have caught it. But regardless, so yeah, I mean, I'll get into Kincaid more later, but just for his draft capital, his situation, still the situation, and the production last year, he is definitely an overrated candidate.
Yeah, I think people see Josh Allen and then they see a bunch of, you know, mostly unestablished names in the Buffalo receiving room, and people think, it's a simple, connection to make that Dalton Kincaid will really shine with Josh Allen. But after a few years together, it's it's not as clear as it once was. So I'm right there with you, and someone I considered putting here as well.
We talked about him in the pocket he went in last year with Bowers and McBride. That was that's tough to take Kincaid between those two. That's one that stings. I know Savon didn't take him. He traded for him shortly after the draft, but that's a tough one.
Yeah, McBride, it went McBride, Kincaid, and then Bowers. So right in the middle there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Svan asked me to go next, and so I selected for my overrated candidate George Pickens, recently traded to the Dallas Cowboys. And I feel like a good amount of people are fairly high on this move for George Pickens' value. I think it's great for him. I think I fall on the other side of the coin. I've never been a huge George Pickens believer myself. Savant drafted George Pickens at the 501 in the inaugural draft. And last year, George Pickens finished as the number 42 wide receiver. Granted, he only played 14 games, but I just think after a few years of George Pickens, Dallas isn't necessarily an upgrade for him. The biggest point in my mind is CeeDee Lamb is an alpha in the NFL on the Dallas Cowboys. He is undebatably a top three, top five wide receiver. And just because George Pickens can be an established number two doesn't necessarily mean that his value gets super pumped up from a deflated Steelers offense. George Pickens, he's got 4 or 5 and 3 touchdowns in order over his first 3 seasons. I don't think he is a big red zone threat, so there's some limited value in terms of touchdowns there. And in 2023, 2023 was the only year he eclipsed the 1,000 yard mark. So I just struggle to believe that George Pickens has the value that a lot of people think he does. CeeDee Lamb has obviously been a beast there, but some other number twos with the Dallas Cowboys haven't always been sustainable in fantasy football, like Michael Gallup, for example. So I am not a George Pickens believer. It has nothing to do with who he is. I know some people make that narrative. That's not at all what I'm saying. Uh, I just don't necessarily believe in the fantasy value that he has right now.
Well, I do agree. I am also out on Pickens. I think I'm out on Pickens, the player. I do think the situation is a clear upgrade for him. Like when you think about where he comes from, being really the only receiving threat for a good chunk of the years that he's been there. Um, I think CeeDee Lamb is a good thing for him. Like I think we all agree he's not a number one, but a number two that has a good number one is better than a number two pretending to be a number one. So I think CeeDee Lamb opens up the short to medium and even some of the deep part, and then that takes a lot less of the focus off of him. They still have Ferguson, and Dak is easily the best quarterback he's ever played with. So while I do, it doesn't sound like it, but I do agree Pickens is overrated. I do think the move is definitely a plus for him.
Yeah.
And
Uh, but
I'll chime in real quick. The Just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about Dak being the clear, obvious best quarterback that he's played with. I mean, Dak, perennial 4,000 yard passer. Uh, they throw the ball a ton. Dak just had his injury year last year, so he's going to be healthy this year. And then you get into Pickens quarterbacks. He played with Delvin Hodges, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and then a washed Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for 6 games. So obviously, best quarterback he's played with. Uh, and like Reed was saying, rather be a proven number two than a number two pretending to be a number one. And so I don't. The last couple years are he's been he hasn't finished well. He's been in the 30s or 40s as a finish, and it is a clear situation upgrade. So I think I would just rather take the upside of him being a number two on a good offense with a good quarterback than his situation he's been in the last 3 years.
yeah, and I think part of my hold too is I'm not going to disagree. He doesn't have upside that he obviously does. I really think he's capable of those stinker weeks, and that can really hurt when in a close matchup.
Hmm.
So
With the stinker weeks, though, sorry, I'm going to keep chiming in.
go ahead.
It's because, and if you look back to this year, he literally was the only proven consist. I guess not consistent, but he was the only proven option that the Steelers had. And if a defense is playing them and their only option is to take out George Pickens and make Calvin Austin or whoever they had, Mike Williams, I don't even know, Van Jefferson, if that's their game plan, then I can see why he's going to put up stinkers because he's not a number one wide receiver. But on the Cowboys, when defense's objective is going to be let's bracket Lamb and make Pickens beat us or Ferguson, and I think defenses would rather or yeah,
Yeah, I guess
that's
but then where I'm at is that's fine if they can't single him out as much, but then the targets go down, and I still think they force feed Lamb a whole bunch, and George Pickens doesn't really change that. So
but,
George Pickens is getting the scraps, in my opinion.
but I think they force feed Lamb because they literally haven't had another option since Amari Cooper.
See, I think they force feed him because they can and because he's a top NFL talent.
Well, I think they force feed him because he hides in the slot, and you can force feed whoever you want that hides in the slot. Same with Amon-Ra St. Brown, just hides in the slot. Oops, that's my bad. They just hide in the slot, so you can get unlimited targets if you're in the slot because the majority of teams that travel corners, like Patrick Surtain, can he play in the slot? Yeah, but he's more not, or he's more likely to shadow when they stay outside. And Lamb just, I mean, he just eats in the slot. And why wouldn't you put your best player in the slot when you have no other options? I mean, the Cowboys traded for Jonathan Mingo because they had nothing else. So, yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that was merely an appetizer because we haven't even talked about Rome Odunze. So, Reed, tell us why, and to Savant's face, why Rome Odunze is overrated.
Speaking of hiding in the slot, it's something that Rome Odunze is not going to be able to do this year because that is going to go to Luther Burden. So I I'm generally not a huge believer on the sell high mentality because I feel like there's so much information in fantasy football right now that if you think someone is a sell high, everybody also thinks that. So in a lot of cases, you're all just kind of in the same boat. But damn it, did I sell high on him? I sold him at a point when he was, looking at a power slot role with him and DJ Moore in a Ben Johnson offense. And now, fast forward a couple weeks later, and they take two pass catchers with their first two picks. His power slot role is no longer guaranteed, and there's going to be four guys catching passes instead of two. So, his KTC value did not really go down at all. Like I think he went down like 1 or 200 points, and he's still like a top like 20-ish receiver, I believe. His KTC value is like 5,200. So I not only in the dynasty aspect, but also in a redraft sense, which I think has generally been what we've been focusing on. Like, I think he is a hard sell for me at his cost. Again, there are definitely worlds where he ends up paying off. Top 10 draft capital just a year ago, expecting a big jump from the offense that distributes targets well, but just again at cost, I feel like he's massively overpriced.
Savant, your rebuttal?
my rebuttal. Okay, so obviously, when I traded for him, there was no Loveland, there was no Luther, but there was Ben Johnson. Um, so yeah, I did envision a power slot role, pretty much a bigger Amon-Ra St. Brown. Um, as things sit now, immediately after the draft, I was queasy and my mind was racing. But as I sit now, the way I see it, rookie tight ends usually take a while to develop. So, and then with them already having an established tight end that's been paid in Cole, I could see them want a slow play. I get Loveland had top 10 draft capital, but he also isn't able to participate until training camp because of his shoulder surgery this offseason. So I could see them wanting to take it slow with Colston. And then kind of same thing for Luther is he's got two vets or he's got DJ as a vet in front of him and then a second year player in Rome. So they could take it slow with him. And so the way I've kind of analyzed it in my brain, and maybe it's just me wanting to
Hoping.
believe what I want to believe, but if Rome in the early part of the season establishes, he has the potential to establish himself as the number one option in the offense by the time Luther and Colston are ready to take over full time roles or what have you. And I don't think if things are working and Rome has established himself in the first, let's say, month of the season as the one, that just because they're adding more reps to Colson and Luther that's going to take away from Rome. Like if he is in the slot right away, then there's no reason just because Luther learned the playbook to move him out of it. And I know Luther played a lot in the slot in college because they kind of hit him there too. But Ben did already say, and I know why wouldn't he say, but he said he views Luther as somebody who can play on the outside. So maybe he already has a vision for Rome playing in the slot. But I definitely agree that he's improperly rated as of now, and so only time will tell how that whole Chicago offense plays out because it's kind of one of the more interesting storylines of the offseason.
Reed, I think you should say on air what that quote was that Savon told you about receivers
Oh
and
yeah, of course.
targets.
You shouldn't trade for someone if you're scared of target competition. I didn't want to say it. I wasn't going to bring it up because I had a mostly neutral stance on Rome as a whole. I just think he's overpriced. But if we're going to talk about it, of course you've got to bring that up. I screenshotted that one for future use whenever it comes up.
That is a quote
I,
from Savon for those unaware, by the
yes,
way.
and again, I don't know how many times I've said this. There were no target competition when I made the trade and made the statement. So
In the context of that quote, when Garrett Wilson was on the block, and the only report from Monkas Schefter was that they wanted to see how the draft fell. Are you telling me that you traded for someone and didn't factor in the possibility that they drafted someone else with a new regime to catch passes? That seems like poor ownership from you.
it's terrible ownership. That's why I won a championship.
What
It
was
all
that?
come.
Fifth in points scored? What?
Who cares? Nichols has the ring.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts on the overrated section from you fellas?
I had like seven guys I could have put here, but we'll talk about those guys when they come up.
Sounds great. Well, we can move right along then. Question following up that, and we don't have to digress on this too much, but which of Kincaid, Odunze, and Pickens is most likely to be traded by Savon this year? How about start with you, Reed?
I think Pickens is the clear option here. He's too sunk cost into Rome to trade him, so I don't think he's going to do that. And I don't think anyone's really going to take the bait that Kincaid's going to be like a true tight end one, like a bona fide week to week starter, unless he starts to play really well, in which case Savon won't want to trade him. So, given the fact that he's already shopped Pickens some here and there, I think he's clearly the option here. And again, like a big week one or week two could be a big boost to his value that could get somebody to take the bait
Yeah,
on a good player and a good offense, but could
for
really
sure.
increase his value from where it sits right now.
I'll go with Kincaid here. I think Savon has some good tight ends. Like I previously mentioned, Mark Andrews is the only tight end we haven't mentioned on his team yet. So I think Kincaid could be expendable at some point, depending on his younger tight ends and how they turn out. Savon, don't feel obligated to answer this as this could be incriminating for you, but feel free if you'd like as well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not going to trade Rome and all three of these guys. Really, I can't trade if I wanted to until the season anyway. So,
Sure.
um, if I had to guess, it would probably be Pickens. Um, for yeah, I don't really have a reason right now, but between Pickens and Kincaid, neither of them are going to be gaining value anytime soon. So they'd have to be in season trades. But
Would Pickles be upset if you traded Pickens? Would
no,
that cost him?
she has no ties to
Okay,
George.
good. I just wanted to make sure we didn't cause any ruffle any feathers there.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, next we have droppable. We,
What's funny?
Everything about this slide is funny.
I'll let you start, Savon, while I gather myself.
Um, yeah, I mean it's Hunter Renfro. I just picked him up because he signed, and I mean they can still use pass catching help.
The Panthers, to be clear.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Not a Tet believer,
I
even
was gonna
though
say I thought your take was gonna be that you picked him up because he was gonna overtake Tet on the depth chart.
no, Tet and him they won't cross paths at all. Um, yeah, I mean uh, Adam Thielen is still there somehow. He's old as dirt. Xavier Leggett sucks. He's terrible. Um, Tet I'm not a fan of, but the jury's not out, but we'll see. And then Jalen Coker. So I mean, if Hunter Renfrow can earn the slot role and kind of just be like first half of the season Adam Thielen, then we'll see. I'm not expecting anything from him. I might even drop him right now.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, Reed and I are both in agreement that Tyson Bagent can be dropped. Just Reed, anything you want to say about Bagent?
Yeah, I'd have to go back to something Savan said. Savan, the term you're looking for is the jury is still out.
Yeah, I was
No,
gonna
no,
say.
This is
no. The jury's
our weekly correction of something you said horribly
no.
wrong.
I'm saying like I'm not completely out. Like I could still be won over by Ted is what I was saying.
That would be
Yeah,
the
so that
jury
means
is
the
out.
jury is out, means it's undecided. Means the jury's out deciding what the decision is.
Oh, I thought the jury out meant like we're out on this player.
No,
I
no,
just
they're
I
out
just hope
deciding on the
yes.
verdict.
I just
Okay,
hope
well
Ian sends another meme on this one because this is a good one too.
I'm not out on it, man.
I mean, you just said you might drop him as we speak, so it sounds like you're pretty out on him.
Wait, I thought we were talking about Ted.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that was in context of McMillan there.
okay,
Yeah,
good. Never mind. That's much better. Okay. Tyson Bagent, he doesn't have any reason to be on his roster.
there.
Yeah,
I do have some insider after
no, you don't.
there. I mean, there's not no reason. I just go, Tyler, go.
Okay,
Are
I
you going to
just
try to trade Tyson Bagent to Deshaun because he has Caleb Williams?
No, 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 no. Go on.
there's no problem with quarterback backups, and there's some really good ones, or quarterback handcuffs, if you will. I just Bajan is mid to lower tier of those, and just whatever. So, I mean, fine, because you're a Bears fan, and Bajan's got a cool story, but I I don't know. I call bull crap on insider info about Tyson Bajan.
Okay, Tyler. This we're gonna have to clip this little part here for when my prophecies come through. Don't know what that means, but um, yeah. So Tyson Bagent, right? Two reasons. One, uh, he is in what he is a backup to what projects to be a good offense with a bunch of pass catchers around him. In the 4 games he started for Justin Fields as an undrafted free agent from Division II Shepherd after playing the Colorado School of Mines, started against the Raiders, had a very solid fantasy day. Um, yeah, he went 2-2 as a starter. There is rufflings or rustles, I don't know. So the Bears signed Case Keenum, right? Like a month ago. And there's been some I don't know, some ruffles, some feathers. I don't know. There's something, but it sounds like Tyson is being shopped to a potential team that has like a quarterback question. Not shopped to be a backup, but shopped to compete to be a
That
starter.
is the worst scoop I've ever heard in my entire
It's like
life.
literally only the Steelers.
Okay,
You
so
might as well have just told
okay,
us that you were in competition to be their starter.
so if slash when Tyson Bagent gets traded and becomes a starter, then what?
If Tyson Bagent gets traded and becomes a starter, we'll dedicate an entire episode to me apologizing to you.
And glazing.
No, that's
I'll
too far.
I'll buy you a name tag that says like Milkman or something, and then
Okay,
your name.
okay. I don't
Again,
want that.
to be clear, we're talking about a traded to be the starter, not traded and then someone gets hurt and he starts a game.
Traded and competes and wins the quarterback
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's
yeah.
less than a 0% chance of that happening.
Okay.
You know I'm Mr. Probability, and that's a zero.
Okay. Perfect.
Well, I'm sure this is much more Tyson Bagent Discord than literally anyone has had in the last 3 months. So,
This is going to be our big break on the podcast, is us talking
yeah.
about Tyson Bagent.
All right.
Okay.
Well, let's move on. So speaking of Bagent, he is not the starter for Cevan this year. That is Drake May, who we've talked about at length, and someone we haven't mentioned yet, Michael Penix, who Cevan traded for. Fellas, what is your thoughts on this quarterback room?
Or you're
Swan?
directing it that as I directed at someone.
Sure, Swan.
Okay. So I don't need to talk about Drake anymore. Obviously, he has quarterback one upside with the rushing ability. So, in an improved system, we'll leave it at that. Michael Penix, someone I traded for to be my QB3. in hopes that he becomes one of the or a pocket passer, like a relevant pocket passer, because there's certain thresholds you got to hit to be relevant in fantasy football as a non-rushing quarterback. I'm now banking a lot on him. I'm not as high on him as I am Drake, but I do believe that he has good weapons around him, a very solid offensive line, and play caller that came from Sean McVay. Not sure how I feel about his head coach though, so hopefully that stays stagnant. Don't know if I use that in the right term for the next year or so, but hopefully he learned a lot from Kirk. Not the interceptions part, um, but just really hoping he turns into a solid quarterback two option at least for this next season, and then all the stuff I just talked about, Beijing.
Yeah. Breed.
Sorry, I was just laughing at Tyson Bagent still. I think this is clearly one of the weaker quarterback rooms in the league, but I also think that the difference between their, let's just say, their median outcome and their top end outcome, not many people have more ceiling than this room. So I think you're looking at someone where Savant's investing a lot in two second year quarterbacks. One of them probably a more sure bet, but I think Penix the player is really good. I think he elevates his pass catchers a lot. Like when you looked at Drake London's game before and after Penix took over, as the Drake London owner, I watched those games and he was a different guy with Penix. And I think Penix's arm is insane, but as Savon said, it's pretty hard to become truly fantasy relevant as a pocket passer. So I guess we'll see. I don't necessarily think that I see Penix more as like a high end QB2 with upside still, but again, basically no rushing upside because of all the knee injuries he's had. Um, I believe he had 3 or 4 season-ending injuries in college. So not only are you hoping he, is staying healthy, or sorry, not only is he not going to rush, you're hoping he still stays healthy overall. I love him for Drake London purposes, but we'll see. I don't know if trading Mahomes out of this room was the way to go, but Penix again really a big difference between the median outcome and his top end outcome with this room. And of course, if Tyson Bagent's starting for someone, there's 3 guys right there. So
Can you talk about Drake? You didn't say a word.
you've glazed him plenty.
I
What
I,
more do you
I
need to
want
say? I agree
I
with
want to
everything you
hear.
said.
I want to wait. You agree?
No, I don't, but it's not worth
What?
me arguing with you about it.
We don't have to argue. I just want your take. I don't know.
Okay, I think Drake May is a little overrated right now because I think he was solid last year when you take into account the circumstances, but I think people going from he was solid and he had a bad situation to now he's going to be a superstar because they upgraded his situation, I think is quite a big leap to take. Like I think with Penix, or similar to Penix, like I think right to start the year he's probably like a high end QB2, but obviously he has like true like QB1, like the QB1 upside in the perfect situation, whereas I think Penix more has like back end QB1 upside. Like I don't really see any way Penix ever becomes like a top 5 quarterback for fantasy purposes. So um, I like May. I don't see any reason not to like him, but I definitely think he's a little overrated. Was in actually in contention for my overrated slide. I said I was going to mention everybody that I considered when I did consider him, but I do like him enough that I didn't think he was the most overrated on the roster. Like on Keep Trade Cut, he's quarterback 8 and a top 20 asset. That to me is just very rich for me. That's all.
Yeah. I don't have too much to add. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more aligned with Reed there on Drake May. Um, Maybe that's just us, you know, being Monkas haters. I don't know.
It is.
Michael Penix, I considered putting in most improved, but what held me back is I think there's some serious bust potential with Penix, him being older. Reed mentioned the injury history there. The Atlanta organization sketches me out just a bit. I I think I think Penix has the talent there. I for your sake, I hope that he's able to find that and be consistent on a week to week basis. I'm not entirely sold yet that he can be a good NFL quarterback and fantasy asset. I need to see just a bit more feel like I make a strong opinion on him. So this QB room, like Reed said, could have some serious upside, but I think there's also, you know, a fair chance as well that it could really flame out and Savon could be left scrambling midseason for some quarterbacks.
I think too it's kind of overlooked. Like Penix literally started 3 games and he was fantasy good in one of them. So like
Yeah.
he's now dedicated to have Penix at least for the time being as his starting QB2, and he had 1 game with more than 12 points last year. And he's already 25 with bad knees, no rushing upside. So I don't know. Again, I love the player as an NFL quarterback. Like I think his chances of becoming a good NFL quarterback are a lot higher than his chances to become a good fantasy starter.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm comfortable enough with my roster to well, one you get Penix an entire offseason, same system, learning the same playbook with the same offensive line, skill positions, coaches, everything. And then you give him an offseason to be the QB1. He's going to get every rep in training camp, the offseason. And then I think my roster is in a spot where I can I'll be all right with him at QB2 while he continues to develop. And it's really just a risk I was willing to take. And if all he ever is a back end QB1 because he's a good NFL quarterback, but just doesn't have the rushing upside, then I think that's really all I need him to be eventually. So very
Yep.
risky room, but high upside.
I don't hate that at all. Like I think like his 75th percentile outcome is like QB 10, like on average. Like I think that's very possible. Like I don't think he has, I don't think he has a ton of bust risk, honestly, but I just don't think he has a lot of like I feel like his distribution of outcomes is relatively narrow because he's got a rocket arm and no legs. So you just kind of know what you're going to get
Yeah,
if the arm continues to be as advantageous as it was in the last week 18 there. So.
yeah.
Yep. All right. Next up here, we have some running backs. So I'll list them real quick. The starters are going to be right now Jahmyr Gibbs and Caleb Johnson. And then the bench depth fills out with Audric Estime, Bashal Tootin, DJ Giddens, Jalen Wright, and the ETN brothers, Travis and Trevor Cevan. Let's start with you again. Give me some overlooking thoughts on this room.
Okay, I don't need to talk too much about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's just electric. Whenever he touches the ball, it looks like he's just gliding. Um, he's great. Caleb Johnson took a big bet drafting a third round running back where he was supposed to go at the end of the first round. I like the fit on the team. Um, Going back to my last year championship team, I was just kind of starting guys in my RB2. I don't feel like you need to have an overpowered running back room in fantasy. I think you just really need one solid guy. Um, and then, I mean, Reed kind of touched on Travis Etienne. He's kind of more high on him than even I am, but I liked his thoughts. Um, And then going back to last week's episode on Tyler, I also really like the depth. Um, I know they're all backups, but it's kind of along the same lines of I've got Estime, Giddens, Wright, and ETN and Tootin. All it takes is one injury or one opportunity for them to be relevant. Uh, Tootin, first running back pick out of this new regime. I know everybody's given the comps Liam Cohen and Bucky Irving. He's super fast and he can catch the ball. Giddens, if he can beat out Goodson and Khalil Herbert. I was really high on him, regardless of the landing spot going into the rookie draft. So him getting in a run heavy offense behind Jonathan Taylor, if anything ever were to happen to Taylor, and Giddens has that role, just uh that's a running back winning week if you can get him in the lineup. Trevor Etienne, not somebody I knew too much about. I know he catches passes. He split time at Georgia, brother of Travis. Same kind of thing. They signed Rico Dowdle, and they just extended Chuba Hubbard, but some upside there. And then Jalen Wright, he's just super fast. He was somebody who got drafted by the Dolphins last year. Just adding to that track team. He's short, but he's built a lot bigger than A-Chain. So I know A-Chain got all the work last year, but now that Mostert's gone, even though he didn't do too much last year, he could carve himself out a role. I know they just drafted um, big back from
Ollie Gordon.
Ollie Gordon. Yeah, they drafted Ollie Gordon, but he kind of fizzled out in his last year at Oklahoma State. So we'll see what shakes out there. And then Estime, I truly think, I know overpaid for him, but I really do think that he gets the short yardage and goal line work. And so if you can remember back to the Kamara Mark Ingram days, I'm not comparing him to Mark Ingram, but I think he kind of has more of that role in Sean Payton's offense. So if he becomes somebody that's touchdown dependent, but he's still getting his 8 to 12 touches a game, then I think that's it. If you have to throw him in the lineup and hope for a touchdown, that's not the worst possible outcome to have on your bench.
Okay. I think we're all gonna have some variant thoughts here, so I guess Reed, would you like to go next, or do you want me to go next here?
I can go. I actually echo a lot of what Savan said. I think it's a very high upside room. Like if you look at his bench, a lot of his running backs are one injury or, the right situation away from being really relevant. Well, I don't think ETN fits that. Sorry, I don't think Trevor ETN fits that between Travis ETN, Giddens, Tootin, and even Estime. I mean, obviously everyone's throwing Harvey at the top of the depth chart, but if he gets hurt, again, there's a lot of running back touches available in that room. So I really do see, obviously, he has the RB1 from last year. Top two are dynasty running back no matter what. And Gibbs, you know, Caleb Johnson's controversial. I think he's probably a fine mid to low end RB2. But we'll see what the quarterback situation ends up there. But if they end up being an average offense, then there might be some touchdown opportunities there. So I actually echo a lot of what he said. I think there's upside here, and then you have a guaranteed stud at the top. So I don't have a whole lot more to add.
All right, well, I'm gonna drink some haterade here. I really don't like this running back room all that much. So let me just rifle off a few things here. Starting a third round rookie in your RB2 spot, not a fan of that. Audric Estime, RJ Harvey, Jaleel McLaughlin. Just I don't think you can just pencil them in for a goal line role. Bashal, Travis, Tank Bigsby are there. I don't think Bashal is necessarily guaranteed to get a ton of touches, especially if ETN is not cut. I do like DJ Giddens. I'll give you your flowers there. I think him and JT can be pretty special in Indianapolis. Jalen Wright, honestly, just almost put him on the droppable list. Jalen Wright is so bun, Savan, and he was terrible last year. And I'm not buying for a second that he has any glimpse of upside. They drafted Ollie Gordon this year. Trevor Etienne, just big hater of him as well. I really hate the situation too with the running backs in Carolina, Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard, and there's one more name I'm forgetting there.
ETN.
Jonathan
No,
Brooks doesn't count.
it's not Jonathan Brooks.
Rip.
Um, I think there's limited upside here. I think several of these guys have a lot of competition to also get touches if the starter of their team goes down. I think if Gibbs gets injured, which is entirely plausible, this is maybe the worst running back room in the league.
Wow.
And I don't think that's a hot take.
I honestly like I do agree with a lot of what you said, but I think the ones that he does have with Tootin, who again, not necessarily a handcuff, but worst case kind of a handcuff. Giddens, pure handcuff, but in an elite system. ETN potential Travis ETN, that's going to be really annoying. Travis ETN potentially a starter, as is. I'm not huge on Trevor Etienne, Jalen Wright, or Estime, but even those three guys, like that provides depth in his room that I feel like that plus again the top end of Gibbs and you know overdrafting Caleb Johnson, regardless, he's going to be the Steelers starter. So there's I like certain names, but I also agree with what you said that I think some of them are kind of you know valueless. I guess I wouldn't put Jalen Wright as droppable, but I definitely don't see a path to him even with an A-chain injury, to truly be like a difference-making player that you'd start.
Yeah.
Let me chime in real quick. So, Tyler, I'm going to ask you. I know
Hmm.
I said I think Estime is going to be the goal line back. Why
Sure.
don't you think so? Because I know size isn't everything, but outside of him, there is no running back on the roster that is over 5'8" and 210 pounds, and estimates 6'1", 230 pounds. He's just a bowling ball. Um,
I, f- I feel
Jaleel
like
Jaleel's
uh,
5'7", 190 pounds. RJ Harvey, 5'8", 200 pounds. They're just small.
that's fine. I just banking on goal line touchdowns is just something I don't prefer to do.
Nope.
And Estime is also he's under 6 foot as well, not that 5'11", super small. But I just think with a rotation that I don't think height is everything in that situation. So I'm not saying he can't be that. I just would really pause to call him the goal line back right now. And even if he is the goal line back, you don't know, when that's going to come into play. I mean,
Yeah.
he could have 2 touchdowns and be on your bench, and then when or if or when Jameer Gibbs is on bye and you know
Oh, he's got to
Estimate
be on
posts a
bye.
dud.
Oh shit. If Gibbs is on bye, I might be cooked.
Yeah, you
He
might be
will be
good.
on bye for 1 week this year. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, what do you know? What? Let me look what week, because
I
this could be
got you.
bad. No, I'm looking right
It's
now.
But they
probably
don't.
week 6 when you play me.
Week 8. Oh, that's really bad, actually.
Oh,
Okay.
that week's gonna be terrible.
I have a question about the room here. So we talked about Caleb Johnson a bit. I think Reed and I are quite a bit lower on Caleb Johnson, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself. So who starts more games for Savan? We're not talking NFL, but Savan himself. Caleb Johnson or the field, and the field in this case being the rest of Savan's running backs as they currently are. Obviously, there may be changes. So I'll go back to the room here. So you taking Caleb Johnson to start more or the field here? Let's read. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So you're saying this doesn't include if he makes some moves leading up to the season. It doesn't include anything.
Yeah, let's just like if the season starts tomorrow and this is the running back room, are you taking Caleb
Hmm.
Johnson to the field?
Well, obviously there's a distinct risk with Savan in particular that his running back room changes dramatically by then. So just throwing that out, I'd probably still take Caleb Johnson just because Savan's kind of hard-headed and doesn't like to get rid of the sunk cost that he may have. But at the same time, I also again I do think there's potential there that his while his depth is great, they're all like for the most part handcuff options. So I'll still go with Caleb Johnson here, but not definitively.
Okay, it's fun.
Yeah, I would definitely take Caleb Johnson. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely could make a move. I have no moves I'm interested in making right now. So as the season comes
It's
closer,
May.
yeah, exactly. So as the season comes closer, I'm not sure how that's all going to shake out, but I will take Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I'll third that. Can all be in consensus there, but yeah, definitely
I,
some options there. So I guess we'll see.
Let me throw this out there. I was looking at my roster, and I have Gibbs and the Jaguars on bye at the same time. So
Oh,
Who do you have in week 8? Who's your matchup?
um week 8, Tyler.
Oh, let's go.
how convenient. Let's go. All right, well, let's move on ahead and
Oh,
talk.
so real quick, this is actually good. We can refer back to this when you said you hate my running back room,
All right,
and as
I'll
if there's people on my team that are on my team now starting, and they put belt to ass, then we're gonna have to do a whole nother episode.
Clip it.
all right, got it. All right, wide receivers here. I can't shit on these as much. We got Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Stephon Diggs all listed as starters, with Calvin Austin, George Pickens, Hunter Renfrow, Jack Bech, Pat Bryant, and Torrey Horton being the depth pieces here. How about I'll start this one here and then kick it to one of you two. We've talked about these four starters, Neighbors, Harrison, Adunze, and Diggs quite a bit, so I won't talk too much more about them. I think this is probably my favorite part of Savant's team. Is the wide receivers here. He's got a lot of guys he can start in the receiver or flex spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if when he makes trades, he deals from his receivers because they are an area of strength for him. I don't have too much to say about the depth. Calvin Austin, sure, fine. Pickens, I've already given my thoughts. Renfro, okay. Jack Besh is the only other name I really wanted to bring up, and grabbing Besh at the end of the rookie draft in the second round. I think we've mentioned him quite a bit in our previous episodes, but he's someone who could really carve out a role in Vegas. So I think for me, this receiver room is pretty straightforward. So I guess I'll dish it to one of you two if either of you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go here because I don't have too much more to add. We've kind of talked about the top five guys already. I'm a big Torrey Horton fan. I told Savon who my targets were, and then he stole them from me, so that was kind of rude. But we talked about Pat Bryant. Besh has a good opportunity. Probably going to drop Renfro. Pickens is in a better situation. Calvin Austin probably isn't going to be on the roster much longer either. So overall, a really solid receiver room, but betting on a lot of unknowns, I think, at this point, either unknowns or players that you're expecting to jump from. I mean, there's really only two guys that you're pretty sure that they're going to produce at this point, that being Neighbors and Pickens. Like, how much more are you going to get out of Marvin? Rome, an unsure role, and an offense you're hoping that improves. Diggs coming off an ACL, Besh, a rookie, you just don't know what you're going to get. So really, really high upside, but a lot of dependency on players taking a step forward or returning to form in one case.
So, on any more thoughts here?
Yeah, so obviously Malik kind of speaks for himself. Uh, Very impressive rookie season, and by all accounts, there's no reason he doesn't improve on his numbers from last year and elevate even higher. Marvin's a big bet. Traded him. We'll just call him a 1-for-1 swap with Ladd. They're probably about even right now. I just there's nothing funny, Tyler. Nothing. Literally nothing. And
Okay.
you're still laughing. Anyways, so call him even as we sit right now, but I just think at the end of the day, uh, Marvin has a higher ceiling. Draft capital, his father. I know Andre Ladarius McConkey has the name over Marvin, but come on, Marvin has a higher ceiling. And then Rome still has a high ceiling, still got top 10 draft capital, improved system. Uh, he's someone I'm okay with starting in the flex as kind of a boom or bust option early and see if he can establish himself as a good role or a number one option for Ben Johnson and Caleb. And then kind of same thing with Diggs. I touched on it earlier, but I really think he's going to be someone who is at worst a very solid flex option just on PPR volume alone. George Pickens, someone I'm high on. I think improved system. We touched on that earlier. Also, a guy you can throw in the flex, and he could go for 25, or he could give you a goose. So I kind of like having my receiver core where at the end in the flexes you got more of your super high or your various range of outcomes, um, where you could win your week off your flex position or you could lose your week off your flex. And then Hunter Renfro probably going to get dropped before the end of the week. Jack Besh, I was super happy to get in the draft. Second round draft capital. There's a clear void at receiver overall on the team. I know he'll never be the number one option because Brock Bowers, but Gino is able to support multiple pass catchers. And then Reed touched on Pat Bryant earlier. Torrey Horton has a chance to be an outside receiver for the Seahawks because they currently have two slot receivers and one super old. Then Calvin Austin, I thought was an interesting pickup just because they traded George Pickens, and he did kind of have some spike weeks last year. And I know they have the addition of Roman Wilson, but Reed dropped that stat that he loved, and so we'll see if Roman Wilson does anything. They also have a not good quarterback situation, even if they do sign Aaron Rodgers. So overall, I really like the ceiling of my receiver room. Um, And I'm glad to have Malik Neighbors to give me a solid alpha who, for the next 5 years, could finish as the wide receiver one.
Good deal. So let's go ahead and move to tight ends quick. So, Reed, do you want to start here? I know we talked about Dalton Kincaid quite a
Hmm.
bit. Have any other thoughts on the tight end room?
Yeah, Mark Andrews was in contention to be most overrated as well. I forgot to mention those guys earlier too, but it's okay. Yeah, Mark, I'm not a huge Mandrews fan. I very touchdown reliant at this point. He caught a touchdown like an insane on like an insane streak to end the year.
Yeah.
He's just not what he was. He's older. Didn't even know if he was going to be on the team. Still, I guess technically don't know, but not a fan at all. Unlike you guys, I'm not a Ben Sinnott fan. I just I just don't see it, I guess. Um, I've already kind of trashed on Kincaid. I think Kincaid probably ends up being his best option here as kind of like a high end tight end two, maybe a low end tight end one, but not a difference maker. Ferguson's the guy that personally I'd want to have most. I was targeting him with that 304 pick before I traded out because Cevan took him. I think he's in a good spot. Like if he has any chance, I think of hitting like a top five tight end, I think at least maybe not on the season, but like on the back half of the year, like Tyler said earlier, like Ferguson's probably his best bet to find that difference maker at tight end. So overall, like I think a relatively uninspiring room, but also not the worst room in the league for tight ends. So I'm somewhere in the middle on it.
I'll go next real quick, just follow up. I'm super intrigued by this room. I think it actually could be sneaky good. I've talked about Sidney, you guys talked about Kincaid, I've talked about Ferguson. Obviously, Mark Andrews is the vet here, as we've talked about. But I think out of these four options, assuming they're on his team at the start of the year, one or maybe two could really hit. There's a possibility where Swan could have a plethora, sorry, of tight ends that could be started, and so this is another area where he could potentially deal them to other managers.
Yeah, and with me, this might be part one of my hot take, but I think my tight end room sneakily, quietly has become my favorite room on my team. Um, at the end of the season, I hated my tight end room. It was, I know two of these guys were there, but it was Kincaid and Sinnott. And I'm still kind of waiting. I mean, I'm waiting on both of them. I still see the path with all four of these guys. Mark Andrews, the last 3 years, volume's been down, but the touchdowns have been up. And while he has been touchdown dependent the last 3 years, he has scored touchdowns all 3 years. And so being able to acquire him, because I wasn't feeling the best about Kincaid, um, I'm good with starting him and hoping he goes 4 for 30 and a touchdown because that is very much a stat line that Mark Andrews could put up. Kincaid is a post hype sleeper candidate for all the reasons last year he was supposed to break out. There's nothing to say he can't go the traditional tight end route and just break out in year three. Um,
Didn't wasn't he your overrated pick?
yes, but there's nothing different about the situation that is going into this year as it was last year, other than he just didn't do it last year. And so, literally, for all the same reasons, he could blow up and really return on investment from his early fourth round draft capital. Terrence Ferguson, we touched on earlier, uh, in a great offense with a team that's looking to contend. He could take over by midseason and kind of be the back half savior if everything else doesn't work out. Then we also touched on Benson. So I actually really like this tight end room a lot, actually. And I think I have a bunch of options and we'll have even more by season's end.
All right, perfect. Well, let's settle in and let's get spicy here. Savon, you want to kick us off with your hot take for your team?
My hot take is I will have two players from all four positions finish inside the top 12, respectively. Um, Drake May and Michael Penix. I will have
Or Tyson
Jameer.
Pagin?
No,
I heard he's getting
Jameer,
traded to start somewhere.
Jameer Gibbs and uh, one of the running backs, whether it's Caleb or Bashal or
Probably
Travis.
not Caleb though, right?
Um, Receivers, Malik is a lock, and then I would guess Marvin, and then I'm going two tight ends as well. If I had to call a shot, it would be Mark Andrews off touchdowns and Kincaid off the year three breakout.
I think this is a blasphemous take, but at the same time, I also see a path to it happening. But I also see this as a path to happening with just about anybody in the league. So I don't know. I'm lukewarm on this take, but yeah, I think I feel like the only one that I would say like I would bet on him having two top 12 options is receiver.
Yeah,
Like you said, I agree Neighbors is
same.
pretty much a lock, and somebody is going to take a step in his receiver room. I wouldn't bet on it happening, but I definitely think that's his best shot, let alone all four positions.
You know, it'd be really funny is this happening and assuming someone makes playoffs, but then that being juxtapose, you
I
know what
don't
I'm
know what the
saying.
word I know what you're trying to say. I don't know what the actual word is.
Juxtapose, you know what?
No
This,
clue.
this with Savon getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs that'd be pretty awesome.
That would be awesome.
So,
I hope this ages well.
probably not, but we'll see. It's a hot take.
It is.
Okay. Well, any other thoughts, or I can move to Reed's hot take here?
Let's go to Reed.
Okay. Wow, straight and simple. Reed's hot take is Savon misses the playoffs. 4 words, lots of implications there. What are your thoughts, Reed?
Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that I think this is going to happen, but
That's
I'm
literally
saying
what a hot take is.
no, that's not what a hot take is. You don't actually think you're going to have two players at each position finish in the top 12. A hot take is something that is controversial and you could see happening, but not necessarily what you think is going to
It's like
happen.
that meme where that guy's like standing up and the rest of the like people
Yes.
behind him are sitting down.
Yes, exactly. So I think, as I've mentioned multiple times throughout this episode, I think that Savant is a very high ceiling, but he's relying on a lot of players, not just in his receiver room, but in all positions to either take a step forward or return to form. Like, how many actual guarantees does he have to truly produce outside of Gibbs and Neighbors? Not a ton, I think. So I think there is definitely a world where his players don't take steps and he misses the playoffs. Am I betting on that happening? No. You'll see in 2 slides from now that my playoff odds for him are over 50%. But I also very see a very realistic world where the Monkas misses the playoffs,
I
first
just
or worst.
I don't think my team is that much different from last year. And I know that the league's changed and everybody else's teams are different, but I
Your
don't
team hasn't changed much, but you were also fifth in points scored, and only 6 teams make the playoffs. So it's not like you were like running through teams with the top scoring team. Like, yes, you won the championship, but again, we're in a true talent perspective, how many points you scored, you were fifth. And then you traded away Patrick Mahomes and a top, I believe Lad was like wide receiver 11 or 12 last year.
something like that.
So again, I'm not saying I think you're gonna miss the playoffs and you have the ceiling to win the championship still, but you're betting on a lot of players to make jumps or return to form. So that's all. I think it's just a realistic path to this happening, especially
Okay.
when he takes an L to Tyler in week 8 because all of his running backs are on bye.
Just like I was going to take an L to you in week six because I had no quarterbacks.
Yeah, and then you had
Okay.
three. Talk about luck. Shocker.
All
All
right,
right.
it looks
Well,
like Audric Estime's scoring 3 times that week.
this is a spicy take. All my homies are preying on Monka's downfall. So we'll see if that's the case. I don't think I've ever seen Savon miss a playoff. So I'd get my popcorn bucket out if that were to happen.
That would
So
be the world's most defensive offseason I've ever seen. If Savant thought it was bad when when he wins the championship and makes other people's lives bad, wait till he misses the playoffs.
I think I
Yeah.
would buy Savon a ring alone for missing the playoffs.
Okay, sounds. I'm locking that one in.
You can get him his milkman name tag. How about that?
There you go. Okay. Well, I've been gassing up my hot take to you guys. We'll see if it meets the bill here. You guys will have to tell me if it's a good hot take or if I overhyped it. I won't be offended. But I'm gonna go ahead and change the slide and I'm gonna read it to you guys and then explain it piece by piece here, and we'll see what you guys
So
think
you're writing a
about it.
novel,
A novella, actually.
explaining it
Yes.
chapter by chapter to us?
I
Okay.
am. I am scared.
Okay. One of Malik Willis Josh Dobbs, Marcus Mariota, Aiden O'Connell will start at least 1 week for Savant.
What is there
Okay.
to explain from that take?
Well,
Can we add
these
Tyson Bagent to the list?
no, because these are four quarterbacks, and all of them are currently on the waiver wire. So I couldn't add Tyson Bagent here. That wouldn't be as spicy here. What I'm saying is, I think there's a possibility. I mean, obviously injuries, but with the bye weeks and maybe Penix or Drake May falling flat here, Savon could be really hurting for some quarterbacks here. And also with Malik Willis, Josh Dobbs, Marcus Mariota, Aiden O'Connell, they none of them are starters right now. So that would also mean injuries, presumably, for their respective starters here. So lots of moving pieces on here. I'm saying that, one of these four guys will have their starter be injured and they will be starting games. And that will sync up with Savan needing some quarterbacks to start in his fantasy matchups. And I'm going to plant my flag on these four guys. And so when it's week 7 and Savan's starting Aiden O'Connell against you, I told you first that that was going to happen. So
Savan, your thoughts?
I don't hate it. Um, I don't think it's funny.
I thought it was funny.
Um, no, I mean, yeah. Last year I was picking up quarterbacks left and right.
that was the last part I forgot to explain. Last year I went and looked. You started Joe Flacco and Malik Willis multiple weeks. So this is not out of, your realm of possibilities here. You've done this before.
Yeah, no, this one I definitely makes sense. Yeah, only having two quarterbacks last year, sometimes zero. I was working the wire for some quarterbacks, and I mean, if I have to swing a deal for if I have to swing a deal for a shitty quarterback, I probably will. So, I mean, just kind of the overall, I'll be starting someone not on my roster is what you're getting at.
No, I'm planting my flag on these four specifically.
Okay, well, we'll see. I would definitely start Malik Willis.
Marcus Mariota was recently on your team, so
He was. He definitely was.
okay. That's my hot take. Sorry if it fell flat, but that's what I got there. So next we'll talk about our predictions here. Some varying percentages. I'll start real quick, then go to Reed, then Savon. You can tell us your percentages. I had a 68% playoff chance. I can't remember exactly where this lined up with everyone, but it was higher. I think the team's solid overall. I think I said at the beginning of the episode, top four in my mind. Put you just short of a 25% chance to win the championship at 24%.
To make the championship.
Sorry, to make the championship. Yes, that's correct. Um, you don't have a lot of draft capital to trade, but you're shifty. You know how to maneuver the market. So I think it's more likely than not you'll make the playoffs.
Let me go a second. First thing I noticed. So Reed, you have me higher in the power rankings than Tyler. Nothing against you, Tyler, but you have me with a lower championship percentage at 16%.
Correct.
That's very, very interesting.
Well, we're not grading on the same scale. How we all like how the three of us, you giving yourself more than a 1/3 chance of being a top two team is absolutely blasphemous.
No,
How we all grade like the power rankings versus how that translates to playoff and championship odds are different from person to person.
okay. Well, I have myself 90%. There ain't no way I'm missing the fucking playoffs.
There's a
Um,
10% chance
Yeah, it sounds
according to
like there is a
you.
way.
okay, well, I guess it's technically 50%, but there's no way I'm missing the playoffs. You can clip this shit. If I miss the How about this? If I miss the playoffs, I ooh shit, should I say it?
Will resign as co-commissioner.
No. If I miss the playoffs, I will fund the ring by myself out of my own pocket. This
All
season
right.
only.
Clip it.
Deal?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing on our part, so of course we'll accept it.
Okay. And if I don't miss the
Nope,
playoffs,
decline.
No.
then you guys have to split my ring coverage, 250 each. That's fair.
No, that's not fair at all.
How is that not fair?
Why would we bet on you missing the playoffs? We both have you as 60+% chance to make the playoffs.
It's 50-50.
That's not okay. Well, if you thought it
That's
was
so
50-50,
fair.
you wouldn't be giving yourself 90% chance.
Okay,
I,
that's fair though. I'm putting up
No,
'm
75
declined.
bucks.
We're
What
gonna
if
cut
end this
this
pod
off.
before that happens.
Reed, do you have any thoughts here on the predictions for Saban?
Yeah, we're pretty similar. I have his playoff odds above his power rankings, but I have his championship below his. So sorry, I have that flipped. I have his playoff odds below his power ranking, but his championship odds above because I think that, as I said like 18 times already, if he has the jumps that he needs, his ceiling is really high. But so therefore, I have him higher than some teams I might think are a better bet to make the playoffs. But I have his playoff odds a little bit lower because he is at risk again. He's starting two second-year quarterbacks who both did not start a full year last year. A lot of players looking to make a year two jump or a year three jump in some cases. So, um, yeah, I mean, again, he's definitely a top half team for me. Championship odds are solid enough to make the top two or be a top two team. So, yeah, I think it's a very he is definitely one of the teams in the league.
That is correct.
I never got to my championship odds, so I'm just going to talk about that real quick. 35% because that's my favorite number. Um, that's all.
That
Okay.
checks out. A
Vote
one
of
third chance
confidence
of being a
there.
top two team is blasphemous. I'll say it again to emphasize the point.
They ball don't lie.
Ball
Well,
does lie.
that wraps up that team breakdown of Savan's team. Lots of good stuff there. I'm sure you guys in the sleeper chat will all be aware of his team as he'll be talking about them constantly. So, any more thoughts from you fellas?
Reed, finish your. I know you got one thing to say.
No, I was just gonna say I'm gonna clip the I'll pay for the ring if I don't make the playoffs, regardless of the. I'm gonna edit it so it doesn't sound like you say when I
Yeah.
if I miss the playoffs, so
Okay.
everyone will assume you're paying for the ring.
Perfect. All I'll say is if you're not with me, you're against me.
You haven't even
Uh,
seen Star Wars.
let me finish. This is my. If you're not with me, you're against me. Um, Drake May is going to have to carry hard, putting a lot of stock into him. Caleb Johnson, just do stuff in the RB2 slot. I don't need you to do much. Just do anything. Um, and yeah, that's all I got for me.
You want to take us home, Reed?
I don't really have anything else to say, so check us in next week, and we'll be going over my team for the final one of us three, and then we're going to branch out to the rest of the league. And as I've said before, everybody will have an open invitation to join their episode, give their thoughts on their own team. Otherwise, we're just going to tear your team to shreds without you. So tune in next week, and we'll see you then.